Tariffs. They are absolutely one of the most highly debated and honestly most frequently misunderstood weapons in all of global economics. But today, instead of getting totally bogged down in the heavy geopolitical noise or dense international trade law, we're going to run a remarkably simple thought experiment in this explainer. We're going to use monkeys and mangoes. By stripping away all the real-world politics, we can really look at the pure mechanics of market intervention, how it fundamentally alters global exchange, and why, at the end of the day, it actually matters to your everyday life. So let's set the stage and establish the baseline of our global economy. Picture two totally distinct environments. On one side, we have Mangoland. Now, Mangoland is geographically blessed. They have tons of mango trees, but a tiny monkey population. Then on the other side, we have Monkeyland. They've got a massive, bustling monkey population, but tragically, just not nearly enough mangoes to go around. And you know, this right here is the fundamental engine of global trade. It's uneven resource distribution meeting demand. One place has an excess, another has a deep need. Naturally, these two places just solve each other's resource gaps. Monkeyland imports the fruit to feed its hungry population, and Mangoland exports its surplus to generate wealth. It's an import, it's an export. And in a frictionless market, everybody wins. Supply meets demand, and we get this perfectly balanced system of exchange where both economies thrive simply by leaning into their natural geographic advantages. It's a beautiful thing. But, as we know, economics rarely stays that simple for very long, and political pressure quickly builds. One day, the government of Monkeyland decides they need to step in. They want to boost their own local mango farmers, who are really struggling to compete with this massive, highly efficient flood of foreign fruit. So they decide it's time for some protectionism. The goal? Fundamentally shift how their own citizens behave at the grocery store. Enter the tariff. To force that change in consumer behavior, the government introduces this new rule. The business importing those delicious mangoes must now pay a premium, basically handing over extra bananas, actually scratch that, let's call it cash, directly to the Monkeyland government just across the border. Now keep in mind, the foreign farmer hasn't actually changed their prices at all, but the market has been artificially manipulated, which drives the local cost of that foreign product way up. Let's see how this actually plays out on the ground, because it's a rapid chain reaction. Step 1, the government creates the tax. Step 2, importers immediately pass that extra cost right onto the consumer, which raises the shelf prices. Step 3, your average monkey walks into the grocery store, sees this sudden crazy price hike on foreign fruits, and pivots straight to the now competitively priced local mangoes. And step 4, local farmers experience a massive boom in demand. They expand their operations and they celebrate. So the government's plan worked, right? Well, sort of. And this is where we see the immediate real-world ripple effect across the broader economy. Because sure, the local farmers are popping champagne and government revenues are way up. But where is that wealth actually coming from? It's essentially being transferred directly from the pockets of local consumers. Families are now paying more at the register. Small businesses. Think about the local smoothie shops that relied on cheap input materials. They suddenly face severe margin compression, maybe even bankruptcy. The intervention comes at a very steep, tangible cost. Which brings us to a fundamental, absolute law of economics. There are always trade-offs. Market interventions just do not happen in a vacuum. You simply cannot shield the local producer without passing the bill directly down to the local consumer. Every single action redistributes wealth and creates distinct, often pretty painful, consequences for different groups living within the exact same economy. This naturally leads us to a pretty massive question. If tariffs actively cause inflation for families and squeeze those small local businesses, why in the world are they the go-to tool for policymakers everywhere? Why actively embrace something that makes the economy less efficient? Well, it turns out governments have highly specific strategic motivations that often completely override immediate consumer comfort. Governments generally pull the tariff lever for three strategic reasons. First up, as we just saw, to heavily shield their domestic industries from massive foreign competitors. Second, it's a very direct, very fast mechanism to generate vast tax revenue to fund the state. And third, and we see this all the time in our modern world, they serve as geopolitical weapons. They allow nations to apply immense economic pressure and gain leverage without ever firing a single shot. But using these as weapons is incredibly risky. It is exactly how you accidentally start a trade war, which is just a rapid, vicious escalation. Think about it. Monkeyland taxes imports on day 1, Mangoland gets mad and retaliates on day 2 by heavily taxing banana smoothies. By day 3, you've reached a total stalemate. International trade just grinds to a halt, inflation spikes everywhere, and absolutely no one wins. It's essentially a game of mutually assured economic destruction. While looking at this completely objectively, there's a reason these policies exist. There are very valid arguments for protectionism. The classic infant industry argument tells us that temporary walls can be absolutely vital. If Monkeyland literally just planted its very first orchard, a tariff acts like an economic greenhouse. It protects that fragile new sector from being instantly crushed by highly efficient, firmly established foreign monopolies, giving it the crucial time it needs to scale up and actually compete. There's also a really fascinating modern twist on this, the environmental tariff. And this completely flips the traditional model on its head. Instead of just protecting local jobs, governments use tariffs to price in negative real-world impacts. Sustainably produced clean mangoes get to enter freely, while dirty mangoes face heavy ecological taxes. It cleverly leverages international trade laws to actively penalize bad environmental behavior while actively rewarding global sustainability. Pretty smart, right? On the flip side, though, we have to look at the bad. Critics will aggressively point out that tariffs are rarely the precise surgical tools that politicians promise they'll be. In reality, they're blunt instruments. They consistently trigger inflation, they bankrupt downstream businesses that are highly dependent on imported materials, they severely slow down global economic growth, and often they just artificially prop up incredibly inefficient local systems while you, the general public, foot the bill. Ultimately, the core argument against all this interference boils down to something called the law of comparative advantage. Mangoland has the perfect climate to grow fruit. Monkeyland has the perfect infrastructure to blend smoothies. When left entirely alone, specialization takes over. They trade their excess, and through that pure cooperative exchange, both nations maximize their efficiency and become measurably richer. Tariffs intentionally break that natural optimization. So, where does that leave us? What's the ultimate takeaway here? Well, tariffs inherently disrupt the delicate natural balance of trade. Sometimes, yes, they provide absolutely crucial shelter for local growth, and other times, they serve as messy, highly inflationary political bludgeons. But really understanding these underlying mechanics, that makes us better analysts and far better voters. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. The next time you see a big news headline announcing a brand new tariff, ask yourself, are we building walls that safely protect our future, or are we literally just making everyone's mangoes way too expensive to eat?